was talking with Alan about actually producing this through Victory Point and then through whoever it was that bought Victory Point, and that Victory Point just went away.
Yeah.
So Worthington was good enough to pick it up.
Yeah, I've really been impressed with a lot of stuff that they've been doing lately too. So I started off playing Hold the Line 15 years ago and really enjoyed that system and kind of seen it's gone through its growth phases and expansions, and that's always been kind of fun. And lately I look back through my channel and I see more and more Worthington games on my list. I'm like a fanboy now. I don't know what to do. But I really enjoy their series, a lot of different stuff that they do. Conflict of Heroes series by Uwe Eichert and the Academy Games does some great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in that particular vein, I'm a huge fan of Lock and Load.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but it's I have the entire series.
I do too.
And I designed one of the modules, actually.
Oh, did you really? Which one?
The War, what is it, Hell Frozen Over?
I've got it. I have not played it yet. I actually haven't played Lock and Load in about 5 years because of the shift in game mechanics is so different from most other games that it's hard to get the shift right. So there's like the 2 dice mechanic versus the 1 dice mechanic. Like the 2 dice for infantry and then the ones, and then you got to flip back and forth when you're doing infantry against tanks and stuff. So it gets a little complicated. I like sticking just basic infantry or just basic tanks with the game, and then reintroduce, kind of getting more complicated as you go. But it gets complicated really quick in that game.
The ASL.
Right. See, I'm not an ASL player, and I am fearful of ASL because I would have to collect and buy everything. So.
Okay, so where do you want to start?
All right, let's start with the game. I've got Hatton set up here.
Okay.
And we could just kind of talk about the general process.
Okay.
I understand the remove leader step is not necessary in the first part of the game. Basically, the player decides where they want to put it, and usually with the unit is preferred just because the extra benefits of having a leader with the unit. We've got the reinforcements up top here. We've got the turn and the initiative. We've got AP points up here. So I guess we can actually just kind of go straight to receiving AP. And how that works.
So that's a fairly simple process. I mean, pretty much all you do is you count up however many borders your leaders provide.
Right.
And that's based on the command value of the leaders.
Okay.
You said you have Hattin loaded?
Yes.
Okay, let me just look that up here.
So we have 2 on the red team and 1 on the blue team.
Okay, so Hattin, there we go. Okay, so for instance, the Crusaders are going to get a base of 2 orders for the 1 leader that they have. They have the 2/2/2 leader.
Right.
And then what you're going to do is the blue guys are going to draw a card from the deck, from the top of their deck.
Okay.
And look at the command value at the top. So for instance, I don't know if you can see this card I just pulled.
I totally missed that. Like, when I was reading the rules, I actually was looking at the value of the dice. So that was a big mistake on my part.
Yeah, so you're just going to look at whatever the command value of the card is, which is at the top of the card. So that I just pulled like the command +2. So they're going to get 4 action checks.
Right.
And then, of course, you have Saladin, who starts with 1 leader on the board. I'm just trying to remember. The second leader isn't on the map until the second turn at the earliest. So he's going to be pulling a 1 plus whatever he happens to get here. Try to get this centered on my phone here.
All right, it's 1 plus 2.
So that's another +1 there. So he would get 2.
Okay.
And that's how you go about getting command.
Okay.
The trick to this is that if, say, for instance, you either permanently or temporarily lose a leader, so if a leader gets killed or if a leader gets disrupted and has to come back 2 turns later, you're going to have 2 turns without the command value of that leader.
Okay.
So, for instance, you'll be in the case of the Crusaders in this example, if they lose their one leader temporarily or permanently, they're just going to be pulling a card and hope that they don't get a Deus Ex Machina card, which is a 0 command value.
That could be bad,
so
right?
They might. Yeah, exactly.
All right, that seems pretty.
There's only 2 of those in the deck, so odds are they're not going to get it. But hey, when I play it, the worst things usually seem to happen. So
yeah, I'm the same way, and I'm kind of glad you did the dice mechanic and the cards thing, because I am one of those guys who rolls a 1 constantly. I'm notorious. My friends just laugh hysterically. Fortunately, I have a good sense of humor, so it doesn't really bother me too much. But it's nice to have that built into the deck there. So
right. Okay, so the next step is determining initiative.
Okay.
Also straightforward. Now, what will happen is both players are going to draw a card and check the die.
Right.
Whoever gets the high die wins. Okay?
Right.
But if a side has been carrying the initiative, at the end of every turn, whoever has the initiative. Well, let me back up and try and explain this better. After you determine who has the initiative, whoever has it is going to advance it 1 space forward on the track.
Right.
There's an initiative panic track. So what that means is it's going to start at 0, right? So there's going to be no modifiers to the die rolls. But
right.
Each subsequent turn that a player holds the initiative, they're going to subtract 1 from their die roll.
Okay.
So
and
it becomes easier. Eventually, it's going to flip over to the other player.
It's on the turn track up top here?
Yeah, you just use the Army Panic track to track the initiative.
Okay. And who wins ties?
That goes to whoever it is that held it last turn.
Okay, so in the first turn it doesn't really matter, you just draw again?
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, no. The side A always holds the initiative at the beginning.
Side A. Okay, very good. So that is the red guys, all right? All right. So we got initiative. So, for example, next turn we would draw cards, and side A would be at a -1 because they had the initiative before, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And if they manage to win it again on the next turn, it would be -2, and so on and so forth until they lose the initiative. In which case, Saladin would place the mark in the 0 box, and the next turn it would be 0. The turn after that, -1. And so on and so forth.
Very good.
Okay.
No problems there.
Yeah. The important thing here, also to remember, and the reason why you actually get your action points first, is say for instance, Guy wins the initiative on the first turn, but Saladin wants to go first.
Mm-hmm.
He can burn one of his action points to steal the initiative.
Now, is this part of the action round, or do we?
No.
Okay.
No, this is determining initiative.
Right now.
You're
okay.
still in the determine initiative phase.
Okay.
So he can burn one, and then, Guy can burn one of his to steal it back, and it kind of goes back and forth until somebody doesn't want to burn any more initiative to keep the, burn actions to keep the initiative.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, action points are not only used during the action cycle. There are a lot of different places where you can use action points.
Okay.
So initiative is the first place.
Very cool.
Then you're just dropping leaders back onto the board anywhere you want to put them. You can put them on units, you can put them off of units. It all kind of depends on what the situation is and how you think that they can best provide command to their units.
All right, sounds good. So now we're at the point where we decide where we want to place the leaders?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, in deciding where to put them, we've got a command range.
Yep.
Let's see.
Yeah, you have a command range and you have a command radius, or a command value, combat value, sorry.
Right.
So obviously the command range will create larger formations, but the combat value will enhance the unit when it gets into melee.
So that's a combat of 2 and a range of 1?
Oh, you're looking at Saladin? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a range of 2 and a combat of 1.
All right.
Yeah, the range is the middle number. The combat value is the rightmost number.
Now, does he move like separate from a unit, or does he move on his own?
Once he's actually stacked with a unit, he moves with the unit.
Okay.
And if say for instance you don't put him on a unit, he'll just sit there.
Right.
And he can't move until the next turn when you pull him off and then put him back down somewhere else.
Okay.
There is an optional rule, however, that does allow leaders to actually move, and I believe they move like they're like cavalry units, I think.
Right.
But that's an optional rule.
Okay. So as far as my consideration for putting him here on the board, it's probably best to do at the end because I'd want to move up and try to flank somebody. This end's a little closer, so it's going to take me 1 action point to activate these guys because of the formation rule and the command, and then 1 to activate this guy, right?
Yeah, I can't see the guys you're pointing at. They're kind of off camera. Sorry.
What is going on? All right. I apologize. I do not have the best setup here. Okay. All right.
That's
so.
Okay. I have my iPhone hanging off of a light above my board here, so seems to work okay, I guess.
So the consideration was to try to attack this flank here, using this 1 command to activate as a formation. That would be 1 action point, and this would be another activation point because he's outside of command. Correct?
That's correct. However, if you shift, it looks like if you shift Saladin 1 to I guess it would be his left.
Right.
There. Okay, he has a command radius of 2, correct?
Right.
So he should be able to get everybody in the command.
Okay.
It's as the crow flies. It's not movement points or anything.
Okay.
So that way he can get everybody into command. It would be 1 formation. However, your initial assumption was correct. Is if, say, for instance, he had a command radius of 1, that 1 guy at the tailing end would be out of command. You'd have to use an additional action point to activate that guy.
Right. All right, sounds good. So now we've got the knights on this side over here and the heavy infantry. The heavy infantry being the slower of the units.
Yep.
What kind of advice would you offer in this situation here? Placing him directly in the center with the war wagon?
He's got a command radius of 2. It really depends on how you intend to meet Saladin.
Right.
I mean, if you want to use your knights to meet Saladin, which is probably not a bad idea. I mean, Saladin's got light cast against knights. That's pretty much a major hammer.
Right.
So you might want to use him to activate the knights as a formation, and then kind of have your heavy infantry as protection for the war wagon.
Okay.
Another thing that you also might want to consider, which I know I mentioned in the rules, but it's something that may not be immediately obvious, is that when you activate units, you can disrupt them on purpose. And the reason that you would do that is the movement values on the disrupted side are typically higher than they are on the non-disrupted side.
Ah, okay. I was just reading that this morning.
So for the heavy infantry, it's probably more of a case than it is for the cavalry.
Right.
That way you can get them into formation, into a protective position a little bit more quickly by disrupting them. But the problem is that of course leaves them open to attack and only 1 step away from elimination until you can get them rallied again.
Okay.
So it's kind of a crapshoot. You got to kind of decide
double-edged sword there.
What you want to do.
All right, sounds good. So, all right. So we've got the initiative. We've got the draw cards. We've got the place leaders done. So we're in the action phase right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the differences between Ancient Battles Deluxe kind of threw me for a little bit. I seem to remember like a range phase, and the yellow markers being used for range attacks. In this one, it sounds like there's any action that you do, either moving or range firing, or both, right? Puts a yellow marker on there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the same in Ancient Battles Deluxe. It's pretty much what you're doing is you're going to pick a formation or a single unit, and you're going to have them do something.
Okay.
That's either going to be move, it's going to be ranged attack, it's going to be rally. Obviously, it's more economical to do it with a formation because everybody, does the same action, but everybody gets to do it.
Okay.
Like you get to move all of your knights. And depending on the action that they take, they're either going to be marked with a yellow or a red block. Generally, they're marked with a yellow block. But if they do ranged combat, they're going to be marked with a red block, indicating that they can't do melee.
I'm missing a knight, sadly, here. Which is not good. Yeah, I really like the counter work here.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, they tried really hard to find something sufficiently generic, because people were saying it's like, well, if it's a Roman battle, I want to see a Roman centurion. It's like, well, what's a Roman centurion going to be doing in medieval England?
Right.
So
right.
it's trying to come up with something sufficiently generic was kind of difficult, but I think they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I like that because it also kind of eliminated the expansions in a way. So it sounds like in Ancient Battles Deluxe, you had the base pack, which, it was about $30, $40. And then you add the extra expansion and stuff, and it was another 30 or 40. So that kind of combination thing really kind of gives you a lot more use out of a base game. So that's nice.
Yeah, I tried to pick all of the scenarios. I don't say all of them. Most of the scenarios are adapted from Ancient Battles Deluxe. But there are a couple of new ones in here that were not in Ancient Battles Deluxe, like Pelusium, which is one of my favorites. That's a brand spanking new one.
Cool. I have to check it out. And anything with elephants is always fun. All right, so we've got the initiative for the red guys here, and we're going to pop up. Each unit activates individually, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. Right.
We're going to come
up. So you're going to move them?
Yep.
Okay, now the subtleties of movement. Of course, movement is into the forward 2 hexes. So when you advance somebody, that costs 1 movement point. Of course, there is no terrain in the base set, so you don't have to worry about the terrain costs. So it's just nice and straightforward, 1 movement point per hex. When you move forward into a hex, you can rotate 1 hex point, 1 vertex for free in the direction in which you move the guy. So, say for instance, the guy, that knight at the end there, he moves into, say for instance, the left. I guess that would be the right. Yeah, there you go. Say he moves into the right one. And you keep bouncing your finger back and forth. He can rotate for free 1 vertex to the right.
Okay.
So it's just kind of like a momentum thing. Think of it in those terms.
Right.
He's kind of like swinging off to the right there, so it's a little bit easier for him to turn to the right. However, if he moved into the other hex, he could swing to the left 1 vertex for free.
Okay. And
any other change in facing costs an additional movement point.
And we're always pointing the unit at the corner, right? Not the side.
Correct.
Okay. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Not enough to get there. And we'll do the same thing for this guy.
And face him towards the vertex there, buddy.
Oh, yeah. Old habits.
Nah, see, not that way. You have, because see, for instance, you move to the right,
so
you can only swing to the right for free. So otherwise, that would cost you an extra movement point.
So 1.
So let me do this. Hang on a second. Let me grab a unit here and throw it onto the board.
Okay.
Let me see if I can open this thing up here. I have this clear tape that's like holding things together. I don't know if you've ever seen this clear acrylic tape. It's really good for holding card decks together because it doesn't mar the cards and it doesn't dissolve like a rubber band does over time. But it's hard to see on something that's clear. So let me grab a knight out. Okay. So can you see him?
Yep.
Here? Okay. So he moves 4. He could go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then since he just moved to the right, he can swing that way for free.
Okay.
Or he could go, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then swing that way for free.
Okay.
Otherwise, if he wanted to go, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's more than one, more than that free move, that would cost him a movement point to do.
Okay. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I could turn this way if I wanted?
You could turn to the right.
Right.
Because you moved into the right hex.
Like so?
I think so.
Okay. I think I'll just stay this way. All right, so same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Trying to figure out how to expand your video to make it bigger. Maybe it's...
You can right or click on the dots and do spotlight or replace.
I just see chat.
Is that any better?
Oh, there it goes.
Okay, cool.
I got it. There you go.
And then 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget to move that leader with that guy that he was stacked with.
Okay. All right, so in this situation, I'm kind of opening up my flank on both sides to potential for these guys to swing around.
Absolutely.
So I need to swing this guy this way, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, of course, that light infantry moves 6, or the light cavalry moves 6, so they can still probably bounce around your flank.
That's not good. And there's no way to get there. There's no force movement, right? There's no way to push them on forward to...
They're actually one of the things that we didn't do here at the beginning of the scenario. You should have dealt yourself a number of cards equal to your morale value.
Okay, all right.
Which is the total number of command points that you've got.
Okay.
There are special cards, events that might allow you to move a little bit further. So it's handy to have those cards available.
All right.
Because you never know if you have something that might come in handy.
All right.
You, for instance, could increase your command radius. There's all kinds of funky stuff that you can do.
All right. So we've got fatigue, just to scratch, advance, and flank shot.
Okay.
All right. So nothing that would help us advance.
Okay.
I'm thinking maybe we shouldn't be so aggressive. So
maybe not.
So instead of being brave with our knights here, I think I'm going to reconsider putting the heavy infantry into a situation where they might be able to help over here.
Mm-hmm.
So their movement is 2, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, 1, 2. 1, 2.
Okay.
And then
Yeah, faceless vertexes.
2. I know, it's a bad habit. All right. And then the war wagon, we typically want to leave where it is, right? We don't want to move that.
You want to kind of keep. Well, the one thing that's good about a war wagon is that it's a mobile camp. So if the enemy starts to get a little bit too close, you can kind of try to wheel the camp away to make it a little harder for it to get.
Okay.
But if you lose the camp, that's a victory point for your opponent. So you just want to bear that in mind.
So I might just do this, and then turn that way. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I might just.
Yeah, of course. The other benefit to the camps, and that includes the war wagons, is that they have a 360-degree field of fire. So you can use them. If the enemy gets a little bit too close, you can kind of pepper them with missile fire from the camp. So.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a zillion little things to bear in mind with this game. Were all of those guys within command radius?
These two and then we've got a commander with 2, and then we've got these 2. So these guys are not.
But I thought the command was kind of to the right of the compass rose there initially.
This guy right here?
So I think the commander was to the right of the compass rose, as I recall initially.
You're right.
So that guy would not be in command. Yep.
Okay. All right, so I face the vertices. All right, so that's it for us.
Okay, so that's your first action. Okay, now it's up to Saladin to take an action.
All right, so we flip one of these.
Yeah, there you go. Now the trick here with Saladin, of course, is remember that they have 6 heavy cavalry that's going to come off of any map edge that they want.
Okay. Yeah, and from this particular scenario, back in Ancient Battles Deluxe, my favorite place was to bring it down here. And it was a lot of fun. So I love the facing in this game and how like the formations work for such a small, not too complicated game. You know, it's just really got a good feel to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think going from a hex side facing to a hex vertex facing was an important change.
Yeah. All right, so old tactics, not today, and bad going.
Okay.
Oh, that would have been good to... So can you play that at any time? Like if I started to move as the red player here, I could have played this immediately and just throw it down?
You play it wherever it should tell you when you can play it.
Okay.
Usually it's pretty much at any time or whatever the card has to, whatever the card stipulates.
But that would cost me an action point to do that, right?
No.
No?
No, playing a card is free.
Okay.
Buying a new card, that costs an action point.
All right. That's good to know. All right, so what do we want to do with Saladin here? All right, so let's check it out here. We're going to activate, which will cost us a point for formation. And all right, so let's go from this.
Don't forget the zone of control on the front of the units.
Okay.
If you move into the frontal hexes of a unit, you got to stop.
So there's no turning every single time. It's only at the end. You were saying, right? You can't.
Oh no, it's into any hex you move into.
Okay, so we go this way. We could turn this way.
Turn there. Yep.
3.
Yep.
4. And then 5. And then turn.
And he stops.
Yeah.
And turn. Yep.
All right. We'll do the same thing here. 1, 2, 3. I feel like I didn't move enough there. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be a tough battle with the knight. And we'll do that. Okay.
Now here's also something to consider, okay? You got the knights that haven't moved yet, okay? Was he in commander range? I don't know if that war wagon was in command range to Saladin when you...
Oh, you're right. He was on the far end.
Yeah. One of the things that light units are really good for, particularly like cavalry, is to stymie the movement of other units. So, say for instance you have those knights that you didn't move. You could have swung, for instance, one of those light units into the front of those 2 heavies, which would put them in its zone of control.
Right.
And that way, if they withdraw from a zone of control, they're marked with a red block and cannot melee.
Okay. And the initial position marker, that's used to track like where you came from, so you can kind of move around and kind of reevaluate? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can use those light units to stymie movement. Plus, also, light units can dance, especially light cavalry, can dance away from melee unless they're marked with red blocks.
Right.
So it's kind of a good way to pin down, nasty enemy units like knights.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm just throwing that out there.
No, that's good.
A strategy tip.
That's good. So now that we've done all that, we're marking these guys with yellow?
Yep. Yeah, all the other guys should be marked with yellow also.
Okay. And this basically just prevents you from reusing an action point on a unit that's already been spent, right? It's not really...
Correct.
Okay.
That should be yellow, not red.
Oops. Very good.
You just want to put that red marker down there, don't you?
I did. I need to separate it maybe. I'm looking at the board and not looking at the... All right. Very cool. All right, so it is not melee until we've kind of spent all these, right? So we've only spent two so far.
Mm-hmm.
And now back to the red player.
Yep.
And he might want to use his knights and kind of swing around here.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, he definitely put a hurt on that light cap.
We'll spend one here. And so 1. And we got to avoid that zone of control, too. 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, only the front 2 hexes is under control. So you're clear to go right past his flank.
Okay. Even like this way?
Yeah, those are not zone of control. Those are the flank and rear hexes. Zone of control is only the 2 forward hexes.
Okay.
Slam him in there.
I was just thinking about that. All right. So now we have spent 2. Oh, and that cost us 2. Because he's out of command, that would cost us 2.
That's correct. That
right.
costs 2, actually 3 action points to do all of that.
Okay.
I mean, in theory, you could really only do it one at a time.
Right.
And I should have mentioned that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. There's really nothing this guy can do except react with the war wagon to bring him up. So we'll do that. And his movement is 3.
It's
Whatever's on the counter there, I really can't read it there. I think it's a 3 for war wagon.
Yeah, it's a 2-3.
Okay, so of course, personally speaking, I would have left the war wagon where it was because you don't want to put it
within any range of a knight that can come in and trample the crap out of it.
Okay.
So
instead of...
if anything, you would move it further away from the knights.
So this would have been a good chance for the blue guys to play a card. So let's look at not today. Discard this card during any activation cycle and select a disrupted non-impetuous enemy unit. So all the knights are impetuous, right?
In this scenario, yes.
And then that unit must pass a morale check.
Yeah, that's something that we forgot to mention. Actually, when you have impetuous knights, what you actually have to do before you actually start the action cycle, you check for their impetuosity.
Okay.
And if they fail a morale check, they all immediately charge forward.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot that they were impetuous.
Oh, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. But we'll just pretend that they passed the melee or the morale check.
All right, sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 2 action points to spend as the blue player. Do you have any suggestions of things that we could do in reaction to what's happening here?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things that you can do. A, you've moved all your units other than your war wagon, which I'm assuming is still sitting back there.
Right.
You really don't want to move that in case somebody gets close enough and you actually want to shoot it with ranged fire. So what you could do here, there's two things that you could do here. One, you could buy another card.
Okay.
Okay. Or what you could do is you could handicap yourself. What you could do is you could discard one of those activation chits that you have and put it on the turn track and the current turn number. So that's the first turn. And what that will do is that will earn you a certain point level equal to whatever the circle number is on the turn track.
Ah, okay.
So an action point would be worth 5 handicap points. And then at the end of the game, whatever the total number is of the handicap value that you've accumulated during the course of the game, you'll roll on the table and possibly earn a victory point.
Okay.
So in other words, you're kind of hamstringing yourself by limiting the number of command points that you can actually use during the game. Because when that other leader comes on, it's feasible to have upwards of 6 command points total for Saladin.
Right.
Because he only has his 2 leaders are a total of 3, and the cards only give you up to 3 more.
Okay.
So you have 1 that you're never going to use because you have 7. So it kind of behooves you to burn one of them and get that roll on the handicap.
Okay.
You can feasibly burn another one and have a much better chance of getting that victory point. So this is kind of one of those, chicken kind of things.
Right.
Where it's like, look, I'm going to take a free shot at another victory point. You tell your opponent. It's like, what's he going to do? Is he going to be forced to handicap himself to try and, cancel that victory point? Or is he going to actually hold on to, to all the command points that he needs, all the action points that he needs, to move his guys around and do things and rally them, or whatever might happen later on during the course of the game. So it's one of those kind of crapshooty kind of things. It's like, well, what do you want to do?
All right.
How lucky do you feel?
So to track that, I'll just put an AP marker right here on the turn one. Okay.
Yep.
Since it's blue, it'll be good. All right, now, and then we'll just buy a card.
Okay. Well, first it would go back to the.
Oh yeah, that's right. Right.
Yeah, to the Crusaders to do something, which they already did.
Right.
And then it would come back, and now you could put another. You could burn another one of those chits as a handicap if you want. Get 10 points worth.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. Now don't put it in the 1 spot. Put it in the 2 spot. Put it in the 1. It's whatever the current turn is.
Ah.
Because you see, on the second turn, they're only worth 3 points.
Okay.
See, now you got 10 total points going against that die roll for an extra victory point.
Wow. Okay.
And that's pretty good.
Very cool.
The chart, I don't know if the chart is on the back of the player aid card. No, it doesn't look like it is. So it's actually in the rules. So right now, yeah, for handicap, you've got 10. So if you roll a 4 or less, you get a victory point. Yeah, it's on page 13.
Okay. That's under victory level or banked point values? Okay.
There you go.
And the handicap. Okay.
Yep. So you have 10 points right now. So you draw a card that's a 4 or less at the end of the game, you get an extra victory point.
Okay. Very cool.
And of course, now you only have a maximum of 5 order points to play with. So, rather than 6. Yeah, so you'll see how it actually works out.
Right. All right, so it looks like
or you could have, like I said, or you could have bought another card.
Yeah.
But you can only hold a number of cards equal to whatever your morale value is.
Right.
So you can't just keep buying cards. You'd have to discard one of the other cards before you could buy any more.
Okay. Very cool. All right. How long do you think melee would take? Should we do a separate video on that, or do you want to continue on this one?
Mainly probably. I mean, once I show you one, it's pretty much all the same.
Okay.
So.
This is my favorite part, by the way. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm kind of trying to look at some of the situations that you've got there. So say, for instance, we want to do a melee. First of all, let's say, for instance, you got that knight in the rear of the other guy. No, the other rear guy.
Oh, yep, this one.
The
Okay.
yellow block on it. That guy, yeah.
Yep. So we take all these off.
Yeah, you would take all of those off. And then there has been some chatter on the boards as to whether you actually really should take them off. The reason that that's an issue is because one of the things you can do with cavalry units is you can charge, and if you charge, you put 2 blocks on the unit, and in order to know that a kind of unit has charged, you get a bonus of melee, and you would put 2 blocks on them when they're done, but of course, if you pull the yellow blocks off, you don't know whether or not they had actually charged or not.
Okay.
So I was saying just leave the double blocks on there. Somebody else responded, just leave all the blocks on there and don't take any of them off until, the end of melee,
Okay.
which is fine also. I just like to kind of clean the board up a little bit before I go into melee. That's why I kind of set it up that way. But
Right.
it's, to each their own. Okay, so you're going to attack that light half.
Right.
Let me flip over into the melee combat so we can kind of follow through it. First thing that you're going to do is, of course, whoever has the initiative is going to pick the first melee. In this particular situation, of course, the Crusaders have it, so they're going to go first.
Okay.
Next is if you have a light unit that can feasibly withdraw from melee, they can do so at this particular point. And I do not believe that light unit can withdraw. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. Trying to remember how I wrote this. Not marked with an activation marker, may retreat, up and far away, using the standard move process. Okay, so what you could do is you could actually move 3 movement points, that light cavalry, away from that guy. Of course, you would have to move through your own unit.
Right here?
Yeah, but unfortunately, you would actually have to stop when you moved in. Like say for instance, the only place that he could move to is into his own unit.
Okay.
Because this is a standard move, and unfortunately, his own unit is in the zoc of an enemy unit.
Right.
So he would have to stop, and you can't have more than 1 unit in there.
Okay.
So he cannot go into that space. So he really cannot withdraw.
Okay.
Okay, so he's stuck, which makes this a little bit easier. Okay, so then you have a couple of modifiers that are going to affect melee. The first is the size ratio. Okay, and that's pretty much the strength to strength. So the Knigets are 5 to the light cavs 3? Yeah. Okay. So that would be a 1-to-1, right? But since you can't quite get to the 2-to-1, you're going to get a +1 for the size difference.
So am I looking at this table
No,
right
don't
now?
look at that yet.
Okay, all right.
No, we haven't gotten there yet. First thing we're looking at is the size ratio adjustment, okay? And that's the strength of the unit to the strength of the unit.
Ah, okay.
So the knights are 5.
Yep.
And the light cav is 3.
Okay.
Okay. If the for instance, for the sake of argument, if the knight was a 6, it would be a 2-to-1 attack, so that would be a +2.
Right.
You see where I'm getting at?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Since it's not quite a +2, you're just going to get a +1.
Okay.
It's more than the other guy, but it's not twice as much, so that's a +1.
Right.
And now there should be a little combat point marker somewhere that you can kind of track. There's a combat value marker that you can track this kind of stuff
right.
on the turn track.
Okay.
Okay. So he starts at the 1 box. And you can do it there, you can do it on the Army Panic track, it doesn't really matter where you do it. Okay, next you have leader adjustment. You don't have any leaders stacked on either of those units, so there's no modifiers for leaders. If there was, you would increase your combat bonus by whatever the leader's combat value was.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Then you have Clash of Shields. Now that's that table that you were looking at before.
Okay.
So let's take a look at that. So you have a knight attacking a light cav, which is +1.
All right.
You're up to +2. Okay. Then you have the attack vector adjustment. There's a little table, little diagram on the side of the map there next to the Army Panic track.
Yep.
Okay, since you're coming up his rear, that's an extra +2.
Okay.
So you're up to +4.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Now, if the unit that you were attacking in melee had already attacked at melee and was marked with a red block, you would get an extra +1 for that. Because pretty much what's happening is another unit has grabbed him by the nose, and you're coming up and taking a cheap shot.
Okay.
So that's what that is. Next, you have the exertion adjustment. Okay. If you have any action chips unused, you could feasibly discard one to get an extra +1.
Wow. Okay.
So that's why if you do not burn all of your action chips, you could use them in melee for +1 bonus modifiers.
Okay.
So that's a reason not necessarily spend all of your action points. So like I said, they can be used in a lot of different places during the course of the game. And then you might have a card that you want to play. Now, right now, where we're at is we're at a +4, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you're attacking at a +4, or should I say the Crusaders are attacking at a +4, and Saladin is defending with a -4. It's a reciprocal. Okay?
Okay.
Now, card play could feasibly modify either or both of those. Usually what they'll do is they will just modify one size. So say, for instance, maybe Saladin had a card to give them a +1 to their combat value.
Mm-hmm.
So you would be at a +4, and he might go down to a -3.
Okay.
So cards can affect that number individually. Or a card might affect a unit's strength, which is kind of affected, before you actually get to that point where, it's going to be whatever the reciprocal is.
Right.
So for instance, like the knights might hold their combat strength up to a 10, which would be like a +3 against those lights. And you'd be up somewhere around like a +6 by now, I think. So it's the one thing to bear in mind that cards will individually modify those values.
Okay.
It all depends on how they're used. If it says it's going to modify the value, then it just modifies the value. If it says it's going to modify the strength, that kind of happens before those values get modified.
Okay.
So, all right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to draw. First, the initiative player is going to draw a card and check. He's at a +4, so he's going to start down at the 0 column and then slide up to the +4
Mm-hmm.
and see what the result is.
Eliminated.
So what do you got there?
Eliminated.
Eliminated?
Yep.
Good. He's gone. All right. Now Saladin is going to draw a card and check the -4 column.
D.
Okay. So your guy is disrupted. So he flips over.
Ah. Okay.
Okay. Now, since Saladin's units are not indicated in special rules as being disciplined, they must advance into the hex of the unit they just eliminated.
Okay.
Straight ahead. There you go. Now, if you had a leader stacked with him, you could feasibly do a continuance attack and attack somebody else, like, for instance, that other light unit that's right there.
Right.
But there's no leader there, so he can't do that.
Okay.
Unless you have a card or something that allows you to do it. So that's the first melee. Now it's over to Saladin to actually attack somebody.
Okay.
Now, If he chooses not to, that's okay. He doesn't have to. But once he says, I'm not going to do a melee, then he cannot do any more melees during the course of the melee phase.
Okay.
And it's pretty much up to the Crusaders to run rampant.
Oh,
they
wow.
can attack with anybody until they choose to say, I'm done doing melee attacks.
Wow. So that's any unit, right? Like once you pass, you pass. So we might as well attack from this side over here?
If you think that you can actually get a decent result on him, what you might want to do is actually use that guy in the middle and attack that. Not that guy, the guy over one over to his right there.
Right
that
here?
guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you attack the guy that's straight ahead of him,
right,
okay, and manage to actually get a disrupt value on him, that's one step away, and you might feasibly be able to take him out with the other cavalry unit, assuming that that other cavalry unit doesn't get meleeed first.
Yeah, I see what you're
You know
saying.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is you're trying to grab somebody by the nose and then kick them in the ass. That's the term that I like to use. You really need to double up your melee attacks to eliminate guys.
Right, right. And then you break up the formation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
Okay. Let's see. Now, unfortunately, you didn't get anything that had a morale check on it. You didn't get a result that had a morale check on it.
Right.
So say, for instance, that D had like a +1 or something on it.
Uh-huh.
You know, what you'd have to do is let me back up here. Let's say, for instance, that knight was already disrupted. Okay. And you got another D on it, lowercase d, and it had a morale check. So you would have to make a morale check for that unit unmodified, unless you had cards that allow you to modify it. And if he failed that check, that little d would turn into a big D, and he would be eliminated.
All right.
Okay. So, yeah, the morale checks, if you fail them, they kind of escalate the result up to the next higher level. So an M becomes a D, a little D becomes a big D, and a big D becomes an E.
Okay.
Do you kind of follow me where I'm going with that?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
But that's melee.
Okay.
I mean, it's really fairly straightforward.
Yeah, yeah. So.
And I think it's a lot more straightforward than ABD was.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
ABD with the I gotta get twice
as much or 3 times as much. That kind of stuff got a little tedious.
Yeah, I can see that.
So this is pretty much draw a card and kill stuff.
Yeah. And then the text kind of adds a lot to the game as far as like being able to react to something, not just strictly tactical, you know. Tell me about the icons and the colors of the dice and how they're into the game. Or should we talk about?
Okay. There is, and actually, let's assume that we're done with melee.
Okay.
Okay. So the next thing that actually happens is that's you pull all of the markers off,
okay,
and then you go to the random events phase. Let's see. Make sure that I've got this right.
Page 14.
Yeah, melee cycle, turn end. Okay. So back on page 5, after the melee cycle is done, you go to turn end.
Okay.
And then what happens is both of you, or should I say both sides, draw a card and check to see if there's a little icon down on the bottom.
Okay.
Okay. So I want you to draw one for the initiative player, just for shits and giggles.
Right.
Okay.
And it's a guy crawling on the ground.
Okay. So the guy crawling on the ground is, I can't remember what these icons are.
In the game check.
I think that's a fatigue check.
It says end of game check.
Oh, okay. Hang on a second. Now you have the guy crawling on the ground, which is fatigue, right?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. You're right. Fatigue.
Yeah, okay. So with the fatigue check, what you're going to do is actually the other player has to draw a card also.
Okay.
If he gets a fatigue value also,
uh-huh,
the game is shortened by a turn. And you immediately advance the turn marker forward one.
Okay.
He did not, though.
All right.
Okay, so there is no event for blue, and really nothing happens. Let's see. Okay, if a single player draws a fatigue symbol, must draw a die result if the value is less than or equal to the current turn. This army suffers a permanent cumulative +1 die roll modifier to the morale checks. So you actually, it's not going to happen on this turn. Oh, less than or equal to. Yeah, so draw another card for red.
Okay.
You don't want to draw 1. Did you draw 1? I can't tell. If that's a 1 or a 3.
A 3.
Okay, so there's no effect. If that were 1, all of your morale checks would immediately have a +1 for the rest of the game.
Oh, wow.
Basically, you're becoming tired.
Okay.
Yeah. However, if both of you were to draw that fatigue card, the turn would advance. The turn marker would automatically advance 1 space.
Okay.
So essentially, for all intents and purposes, at the end of this turn, it would jump to turn 3. It would skip turn 2 completely.
Okay.
So that's what that is. Okay, now, to get back to your initial question. First of all, what are all the little icons on there?
Yeah.
Just described fatigue. The other little one there is the end of game check. Okay. They're little dice markers on the turn track.
Yeah.
So you see the 1, the 2, the 3, and so on and so forth. If you draw one of those cards, you're going to roll a die, and if it's less than or equal to that value, the game ends immediately.
Okay. Got that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I also see on that blue card in the middle of your little display there,
Uh-huh.
the little card symbol with the circular arrows on it.
On the display here?
No, the cards themselves that you have pulled for blue. You pulled those 3 cards, the 3 action cards for blue, the middle one.
This one right
That's
here?
that symbol.
Right.
Okay, that's a deck reshuffle.
Okay.
So if you had drawn that as your random event, you would reshuffle the deck.
Okay.
Okay. And I've played games where that seems to happen a lot, and I've played games where it hardly happens at all. So it is like completely random as to when you're going to be reshuffling the deck. Of course, if you burn your deck out completely, you're going to be reshuffling it, but you can reshuffle it in advance of that.
Okay.
Now, there's the little card that's right by the compass rose on your display there. The compass rose in the middle of the map. Middle of the map.
Well, map. Oh, this right here. Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
That card, the one you just shifted.
Yeah.
That card right there.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That little symbol is a panic check symbol, I think. Looks an awful lot like a panic check symbol.
It is.
Okay. Okay. Panic is probably one of the trickier things in the game, and it was in Ancient Battles Deluxe also. Each army has a panic level. Okay. So in this particular battle, the Crusaders have a panic of 21, Saladin has a panic of 16. Once an army has lost that many strength points of units, not leaders, but units, their army panics immediately. And what happens is every unit is disrupted, and every unit tries to move away from the enemy and towards a map edge. So that's panic movement in a nutshell.
Okay.
Okay? Assuming that they don't get off the board, because if they get off the board, they're eliminated. They cannot come back. But if you have leaders that can try and rally them back and reform them and reattack, that's fine.
Right.
But if during the random events phase you pull that panic symbol again, or you pull that panic symbol, any army that has previously panicked will panic again immediately.
Okay.
So that's what that panic symbol means. The other trick to that panic symbol is when you are rallying as an action, if an army has panicked and you draw another panic symbol when you're trying to rally, your army panics again.
Oh my God.
So it's kind of like, come on, boys, let's get together, attack again. It's like, screw you, we're getting the hell out of here. So that's kind of what that represents.
Yeah. That is really neat.
The only other symbol out there is the elephant symbol.
Okay.
And that only counts if you have elephants in play.
Right.
And what that is if you draw an elephant symbol for any reason at all, and it doesn't matter if it's you or your opponent, whether you have elephants or your opponents have elephants or both,
right.
If an elephant symbol gets drawn, you have to check for elephant control.
Okay.
So that's what the elephant